My brother changed the locks on our mother's house the Tuesday after we buried her. And he handed me a brass key that did not fit the door I grew up behind. He smiled when he did it, the patient, pitying smile a grown man gives a child who has wandered into a room where the grown folks are talking. My name is Cordelia Van, and I am 64 years old. I had spent the morning of that Tuesday choosing the hymn we would sing over our mother. And I spent the afternoon standing on her porch in Beaumont with a key in my palm that turned a quarter-inch and then stopped cold. "It's just easier this way, Dee," my brother said. His name is Russell, and he is 4 years younger than me. And he has called me Dee my whole life, like it costs him something to say the rest of it. Somebody's got to manage the estate. You've got enough on your plate. His wife, Yvonne, stood behind him on the walk, with her sunglasses on, though the sky was gray. 3 days later, at the repast, I would hear her hand me the name she had been carrying for me my whole life. The quiet one. She called me to her sister through a half-open door. Cordelia, who would cry and pray and go on home and never make a sound about any of it. The whole of this story is the difference between what Yvonne thought quiet meant and what my mother knew it meant. But one person on that street already knew where I belonged, before any document proved it. Across the road, Miss Hattie Pruitt, who had lived opposite us since 1974, was at her screen door watching the whole thing. When the locksmith's van pulled away and left me on the porch with a key that would not turn, she came out onto her steps in her housecoat and called across to me, not to Russell, to me. "Cordelia, baby, you need anything, you come over here. This is still your house. You hear me?" She knew nothing about any deed. She had no way to know. She just knew, after 50 years of watching this family, that the daughter on the porch was the one who belonged to the door, and the man jingling the keys was the one who did not. An old woman across the street saw it before the county ever stamped it. There is a particular cold that comes off a door that used to open for you. It is not weather. It is the temperature of being told, without anyone raising their voice, that you no longer belong to a place that raised you. What Russell did not know, standing there in his pressed gray funeral suit, jingling the new keys like coins, was that the deed to that house on Cherrywood Lane had carried one name on it for the last 11 years, and it was not our mother's, and it was not his. Before this story is over, a clerk in a county records office is going to slide a single sheet of paper across a counter, and my brother is going to learn what our mother decided one autumn afternoon while he was busy not visiting her. But before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been locked out of something you helped build by someone who never thought to ask whose name was really on it? Tell me in the comments. Then stay with me, because I promise you the door opens before the end. Let me take you back to that porch, because that is where the smiling started. That Tuesday, Russell did most of the talking. "I met with a lawyer downtown this morning," he said. "Got the estate started. And I had the locksmith come out at 8, change the locks, change the alarm code. It's all handled, Dee. There's no need for you to be running back and forth from Port Arthur." "You changed the locks," I said. Not a question. I just wanted to hear him say it again. "It's just easier this way," he said. "Somebody's got to manage things, and you've got enough on your plate." "And whose name did the lawyer say the house is in?" I asked. He blinked at that. "It's Mama's house, Dee. It'll go through probate, get split up, the usual. Don't worry yourself about the legal end. That's what I'm for." He said it in the flat, certain, faintly bored voice of a man reading a weather report aloud. He did not know he had just told me, to my face, that he had never once pulled the title. I filed it away in the part of me that files things. "I kept the spare for you," he said, and pressed that brass key into my hand. "For emergencies." I held it. It was warm from his pocket. I did not throw it at him, though my mother, God rest her, would have understood if I had. I closed my fingers around it. "Thank you, Russell," I said. And I watched something flicker across his face that I want you to remember, because it matters later. It was relief. He had expected a fight, and he did not get one, and he read my quiet as surrender. Most people do. It is the most useful mistake anyone has ever made about me. I drove the 41 miles back to my apartment in Port Arthur that evening with the key on the passenger seat. At a red light on Proctor Street, my hands started to shake, and I gripped the wheel until they stopped. Then I did the thing I have done my whole life when a door closes. I started writing down what I knew. I knew our mother, Pearl Van, had bought that house in 1971 with my late father for $9,400. I knew my father died in 2003. And I knew something else. Something I had told no one, not even my own daughter. Because 11 years ago, on an October afternoon I will tell you about in full, my mother had asked me to drive her to a lawyer's office on Calder Avenue, and she had not told Russell, and she had asked me to keep it between us. I did not know, sitting at that red light, exactly what she had signed. I only knew she had signed something and that she had pressed my hand afterward in the car and told me, in that quiet, certain voice of hers, never to let anybody move me. At the time, I thought she meant it as a saying, an old woman's proverb. I tucked it away. That night, alone in my apartment in Port Arthur, I did what I always do. I took out the notebook. The same kind of black and white composition book I had filled with Mama's medications and appointments and the dates of every fall and every good day for years. And I opened to a clean page, and at the top I wrote one word: title. Under it, I wrote out everything I could remember about the house, in order by date. 1971, the purchase, $9,400. 2003, my father's death. The October 11 years back, Mr. Foyle, the manila envelope, the bank, the little brass key, the line about my own ground. I made a column, the same as I make for any account that does not yet balance, and I left a wide blank space on the right side of the page where the answer would go. And I sat looking at that blank space for a long time. I did not fill it in that night. I did not yet have the figure, but I knew, looking at the shape of the column, that it was going to balance, and that whatever number went in that blank space, my mother had put it there on purpose, and that my job was simply to be careful enough to find it. My daughter Simone called that first night, before any of us knew about the deed, and she heard it in my voice. "He did what?" she said. "He changed the locks. He gave me a key for emergencies. It doesn't fit." "Mama, you call a lawyer first thing tomorrow. You hear me?" "First thing." "I'm going to look into something first," I said. "Look into what?" "A Friday, 11 years ago," I said. "Your grandmother took me somewhere and wouldn't tell me why. I think it's time I found out why. A woman who keeps a notebook is never as defenseless as she looks. That is the thing the loud people in a family never understand until it is far too late to understand it gently. Now I am going to tell you who my mother was, because you cannot understand what she did unless you understand her. And you cannot understand me unless you understand the 31 years I spent in that house as the daughter who never left. Pearl Van raised 2 children, buried a husband, and worked 38 years as a seamstress and then a fitting room manager at a department store downtown that does not exist anymore. She was a small woman with a straight back and hands that never stopped. When my father got sick in the late 90s, it was me who moved back into the front bedroom of the Cherrywood house. I was 33 then, recently divorced, and I told myself it was temporary. It lasted, in one form or another, the better part of 3 decades. Russell did not move back. Russell moved to Houston, then Dallas, then back to Houston, and built a life selling commercial insurance, and he was good at it, and I was proud of him. And he came home for Christmas most years, and for nothing else most years. That is not a crime. I want to be fair to my brother, even now. He was not cruel. He was absent, which is a quieter thing, and quieter things are harder to point at. There was money in it too, the staying, though no one ever counted it but me, and I counted it because counting is what I do. The year my father got sick, I turned down a promotion to regional bookkeeper at a firm in Houston, $12,000 more a year, a real raise, a different life. Because Houston was 3 hours from Mama. I remember telling her about it, the offer, sitting at that same kitchen table. I thought she'd be glad I was turning it down. She was not. $12,000 a year, Mama said. And you told them no? For me? For you and Daddy? Somebody's got to be close. Russell's not close. Russell's got his own. Don't, she said, sharp and then softer. Don't you finish that sentence for him. He can finish his own sentences. You always finish everybody's sentences for them, Cordelia, and then you wonder why nobody knows what you actually want. She folded her hands. You take that job if you want it. I'll manage. I don't want it, Mama. I want to be here. She looked at me a long time. All right, she said. Then here is where you'll be. But I'm going to remember this. I remember everything. And she did. She remembered it for 11 years. And then she wrote it down in a lawyer's office and signed her name to it. I have never told a soul that number. 12,000 a year until right now. 12,000 a year across the working years I had left is not a small thing for a divorced woman with her own retirement to mind. I do not say this to be thanked. I say it because when Yvonne told her sister that Cordelia had never fought for one single thing in her life, what she meant was that I had never fought loudly. The fighting I did was the kind that does not make a sound. A raise refused, a Saturday given up, a career bent quietly around the curve of an old woman's needs for the better part of 30 years. That is a fight. It is just a fight nobody films. And here is the thing the world keeps getting wrong about women like me, and the reason my mother did what she did. The family assumed that because I was the one wiping the counters and lining up the pills, I was the one who understood the least about money and law and the cold machinery of how a house actually passes from one hand to another. The opposite was true. I balanced the company's books to the penny for 19 years. I knew what a lien was, and an escrow, and a clouded title before Russell ever sold his first policy. My mother knew which of her children could read a document, and which one only knew how to sign at the bottom of one. She did not pick me because she loved me more. She picked me because she trusted me to understand what I was being handed. I was the one who took Mama to her cardiology appointments at the clinic on 11th Street. I was the one who learned the names of her 7 medications and the order she took them in. I was the one who sat up with her the night she fell in the bathroom and cracked 2 ribs, and the one who slept in the chair beside her hospital bed for 9 nights running. I kept a notebook of all of it. I am a bookkeeper by trade. I have done the books for a tile and flooring company in Nederland for 19 years. And keeping records is simply how my hands think. I did not keep that notebook to win anything. I kept it because that is what I do. But a record you keep out of love has a way of becoming a record you can stand on. Let me give you one ordinary Tuesday from those years. Because I think you will understand my mother better through a Tuesday than through any speech I could make about her. This would have been about 7 years ago. Mama was 83. I had come straight from the flooring company with my work bag still over my shoulder. And I let myself in and found her at the kitchen table with the bills I paid for her fanned out. And she had a pencil in her hand, and she was checking my arithmetic. She did this every month. She could not see well enough by then to read the small print on the electric bill, but she could add a column of figures in her head faster than I could on paper. And she would sit there and shadow my work, and if I was off by even a few cents, she would tap the page with the pencil and say, "Run it again, baby." She trusted me with everything. She still checked. There is no contradiction in that. The people who love you best are the ones who teach you to check. You work too hard for these people, she said that night, meaning the flooring company. 19 years. They ever say thank you? They gave me a ham at Christmas, I said. A ham. She shook her head. Your brother makes 3 times what you make and works half as hard, and you sit here checking my light bill. Russell's got a family to feed, I said. I don't mind, Mama. I know you don't mind. That's what worries me about you. She set the pencil down and looked at me over the top of her glasses. You've got to learn to mind, Cordelia. Just a little. For yourself. What am I supposed to mind? She did not answer that directly. She picked the pencil back up, and she got quiet. That decided quiet of hers, the one that meant she was just waiting for the rest of us to catch up. I'm not worried about you, baby, she said finally. People who keep good books always come out right in the end. It's the ones who never look at the numbers you've got to worry about. Then she tapped the electric bill. Run it again. You're off 11 cents. I ran it again. I was off 11 cents. I am telling you this because I want you to know my mother was not a confused old woman who could be talked into signing anything, no matter what Yvonne would later try to claim in that kitchen. At 83, she caught my 11-cent error in her head in the dark. At 79, when she sat across the desk from Mr. Foyle, she knew exactly what she was doing, down to the last line. I also want you to know what that house held. Because a house is never wood and brick. There was a water stain on the ceiling of the back bedroom, shaped like the state of Louisiana, that my father never fixed, and we all stopped seeing. There were pencil marks on the pantry door frame where Mama measured Russell and me every birthday until we were grown, and then where she measured Russell's children, and then his children's children. 3 generations of heights in fading graphite on one strip of painted wood. There was a loose floorboard in the hall that announced every late-night trip to the kitchen for 40 years. You do not put a price on a floorboard that knows your footsteps. But people who have never lived in a house will try to put it on the open market for $200 and some $1,000 and split the difference. And that is the whole story of certain families right there. If you have ever been the one who stayed, the one who learned the medication order while everyone else learned the highway exits out of town, then you already know the house I am describing, and you know it was never about the wood and the brick. Stay with me, because the part where it stops being about the wood and the brick is coming now. The October afternoon, 11 years back. Mama was 79 then, and sharper than the rest of us put together. She had been quiet for a week, and her quiet always meant she had decided something. One Thursday she came into the kitchen, where I was paying her bills at the table, set down her coffee, and said, "Cordelia, I need you to take me to see a man about my business on Friday, and I don't want your brother knowing, and don't ask me why yet." So I took her. The lawyer's name was Mr. Abner Foyle, an older black gentleman with a tidy office above a bakery on Calder, and Mama sat across his desk with her pocketbook in her lap and her chin level. I waited in the front room. I did not hear what they decided. When she came out, 40 minutes later, she had a manila envelope she would not let me carry. "You want me to hold that for you, Mama?" I asked, reaching. "No, baby. This one I carry myself." In the car, she put the envelope flat in her lap and kept both hands on top of it the whole ride. At a stoplight on Calder, she reached over and pressed my hand on the gear shift. "Cordelia," she said, "don't you ever let anybody move you off your own ground. You hear me?" "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Because you say yes, ma'am, to your mother, even when you have no idea what she means." I thought she was being philosophical. She was being literal. I just did not have the deed yet to know it. Here is what I assumed, and I was wrong on every count. I assumed she had updated her will. I assumed there would be a reading someday, far off, and that Russell and I would split things, and that he would probably get more because he had the better lawyer and the louder voice. And I had made a kind of peace with that years ago. I did not assume she had done what she had actually done. I did not let myself. There is one more piece of that October I have to give you, because I only understood it later. On the drive home from Mr. Foyle's, after she pressed my hand, Mama asked me to stop at the bank on Calder so she could go in alone. She was in there a long time. When she came out, she had a small brass key in a paper envelope, the kind they give you for a safe deposit box, and she put it in her pocketbook and said nothing. I thought it was an old key she was returning. I did not think about it again for 11 years. I will come back to that key, because my mother did not do anything by accident. And that little brass key turned out to be the second half of what she was telling me. She never spoke of any of it again, not once in 11 years. That was Pearl Van. She put a thing in a drawer, and she trusted the drawer. Mama died on a Sunday morning in the spring, in her own bed, with me holding her left hand and the radio playing the gospel hour low. She was 90 years old. Her last clear words to me, the evening before, were not grand. She turned her head on the pillow and she said, "The azaleas need water, Cordelia. Don't let them dry out on you." I told her I'd see to it. "I know you will," she said. "You always see to things." And those were the last whole sentences my mother spoke to me. A chore and a vote of confidence, which is the most Pearl Van thing I can imagine her leaving me with. I want you to hold that picture. Me holding her hand, the azaleas, the radio. Because the very next picture I have to give you is Russell on the phone 2 hours later. "Dee, it's me," he said when I picked up. "I'm so sorry. How are you holding up?" And then, before I could even answer, in the very same breath, "Listen, we're going to need to start thinking about the property pretty soon. The house, there's a lot to sort out." I had not even washed my face. My mother was not yet cold, and my brother was already saying the word property. I remember sitting on the edge of her bed, listening to him and thinking, very calmly, a thought I had always carried but never spoken. He believes this house is his. And underneath that thought, lower and quieter, the drawer in my mind opened just a crack, and Mr. Foyle's tidy office floated up, and my mother's hand pressing mine. I did not say anything. I told Russell we would talk after the funeral. Then I hung up and I watered the azaleas. The week between the death and the burial, Russell was a hurricane of competence. He chose the casket, a model $1,100 dearer than the one Mama had actually picked out and prepaid years before. A fact I knew because I had the prepayment receipt in my notebook, and a fact I let go, because you do not fight over a casket the week you bury your mother. He selected the funeral home. He gave the eulogy, and it was a good eulogy, and he cried real tears, and I held his arm at the graveside and meant it. Whatever else is true, we put our mother in the ground together, and I will not let anybody, including my brother, take that from either of us. But there was a moment at the funeral home I keep returning to, because it told me everything before the Locks ever did. We were in the little arranging office, Russell and Yvonne and me, choosing the program. And who'll be the next of kin on the paperwork? Mr. Esparza, the director, asked gently. Who's signing for the family? I will, Russell said, before I could draw a breath. I'm handling the estate. Not we. I and Yvonne, beside him, gave a small satisfied nod, like a woman watching a transaction close on schedule. That works fine, Mr. Esparza said. And then he glanced at me, just once. Mrs. Van, did you want to add anything? Any input on the program? My mother prepaid for the bronze, not the mahogany, I said quietly. It's in her file. She picked it out herself. Russell waved that off. We're not putting Mama in the cheap one, Dee. It's what she chose, I said. And then I let it go. Because you do not fight over a casket the week you bury your mother. But I saw Mr. Esparza make a small note, and I understood that he had heard which of us actually knew our mother's wishes, even if no one else in that room had. Mr. Esparza looked at me. Just for a second, a flick of the eyes, the look one careful person gives another. And then he slid the form to Russell. I said nothing. I want you to notice that I said nothing. Because people who only met me that week would tell you I was a woman who let her brother run the whole show. They would be right. They would also be missing the entire point, which is that a woman who has kept books for 19 years knows the difference between the things worth signing and the things worth letting somebody else sign. A funeral program is not a deed. Russell signed a great many things that week, with great confidence. None of them were the one that mattered, and he never once asked to see the one that mattered, because it did not occur to him that there could be a document in this world with my name on it instead of his. You sit, Dee, Yvonne said to me at one point, patting the chair, settling me down like an old aunt who keeps trying to help in the kitchen. Let Russell handle the hard parts. I'm fine to help, I said. We've got it, she said. You just take care of yourself. All right, I said, and I sat. I let him handle the hard parts. The hardest part, it turned out, was not a part that he knew was coming. It was the Tuesday after, the Locks, when it stopped being grief and started being a reckoning. I told you Yvonne is the one who named me. Here is how it happened. The repast was at Russell's hotel suite of all places, because he said the house wasn't ready for company, which was a strange thing to say about the house where our mother had hosted 40 years of Sunday dinners. I was carrying a tray of Mama's good teacups into the kitchenette when I heard Yvonne's voice through the half-open door, low to her sister. Don't worry about Dee, she said. She's the quiet one. She'll cry, she'll pray, she'll go back to her little apartment and her little adding machine. Cordelia has never fought for one single thing in her whole life. She said it like a label on a box she intended to push into storage and forget. I stood there holding my mother's teacups, and I did not drop them, and I did not push the door open. I went very still inside. That braced, breathless stillness you fall into when a doctor draws a chair close before speaking. And in that stillness, I made a decision. And the decision was not revenge. though I understand if it looks like that from the outside. The decision was simpler than revenge. I decided I would find out exactly what my mother had signed in Mr. Foyle's office, and whatever it was, I would honor it, even if it honored Russell. Even if the drawer opened on a will that cut me out clean. I would know, and I would do right by her. Because doing right by her was the only fight I had ever actually been in, every single day, for 31 years. I set the teacups down. I drove the 41 miles home. And the next morning, I called Mr. Abner Foyle's office. If you've made it this far into Cordelia's story, hit subscribe, because what happens next is the part I've been waiting to tell you. Mr. Foyle had retired, it turned out, but his practice had been taken over by a younger attorney, a woman named Renata Briscoe, and she had his files. I sat across from her at the same desk above the same bakery. The bakery had changed owners, but it still smelled of cinnamon. And I told her my mother's name and the date, near as I could remember it, of the Friday 11 years back. She found it faster than I expected. She read for a while, quietly, and then she looked up at me over her glasses, and I watched her face do a small, careful thing. The thing a professional does when she is deciding how to tell you something large. "Mrs. Van," she said, "Cordelia, did your mother ever discuss with you the disposition of the house on Cherrywood Lane?" "No, ma'am," I said. She told me not to ask why yet, and then she never told me the why. Renata Briscoe turned a page. "In October of that year, your mother executed 2 documents in this office. One is a will." "I figured there'd be a will," I said. "It's straightforward. Her personal effects and her savings, split evenly between her 2 children, you and a Russell Van, even shares." "That's fair," I said. "That's what she always said she'd do." "So Russell and I split the house and the—" "Mrs. Van." She held up one finger gently. "The will doesn't mention the house." I sat very still. "It has to mention the house. The house is the biggest thing she owned." "It doesn't mention the house," Renata Briscoe said, "because by the time she signed this will, the house was no longer hers to leave in it." She paused. "There's a second document, a deed." The drawer in my mind came fully open. "What kind of deed?" I said. My voice did not sound like mine. "Your mother conveyed the property at Cherrywood Lane 11 years ago, recorded with the county the following week, with a reserved life estate for herself, to a single named grantee. It hasn't been part of her estate for over a decade. There's no probate on it. There's nothing to split. It passed automatically the moment she died. To one person." "To Russell," I said. I genuinely believed in that second that she was about to say Russell. She turned the photocopy around and slid it across the desk to me. "To you, Mrs. Van," she said. "To Cordelia." I would love to tell you I felt triumph. I did not. What I felt, sitting in that cinnamon-smelling room with the photocopy of my mother's signature in front of me, was her hand pressing mine in the car, and her voice telling me not to let anybody move me. She had not been giving me a proverb. She had been telling me, in the only language she trusted, what she had already done. She had given me the ground beneath my feet. She had just trusted me to find out about it when I needed to. "Are you all right, Mrs. Van?" Renata Briscoe asked me, because I think I had gone somewhere for a moment. "Do you need some water?" "No, ma'am," I said. "I'm all right. I'm better than I've been in 3 weeks." "Take your time," she said. "It's a lot to take in." "It's not the taking in," I said. "It's that she knew. She knew the whole time, and she let me carry not knowing, because she trusted me more than she trusted the telling. I pressed my hand flat on the desk to steady it. And then, because the bookkeeper in me cannot help herself, I asked the only question that mattered. Is it solid? If my brother fights it, and he has a good lawyer and his wife has a temper, does this hold? She took her glasses off, and she folded her hands on top of my mother's old file. And she gave me the steady, unhurried look you want from a professional exactly once in your life. "Mrs. Van," she said, "I have practiced property law in this county for 23 years. This is the cleanest conveyance I have ever read. Your mother's own attorney drafted it. It was witnessed, it was notarized, it was recorded with the county the following week. She reserved a life estate, which means she gave up nothing while she lived. And you received everything the moment she passed. There is no probate to fight. There is no will to contest, because the house was never in the will. There is nothing here for a lawyer to grab hold of. Whoever drew this," she tapped the file, "was not taking any chances with you. Somebody wanted to make very sure that, when this day came, you would win without ever having to raise your voice." I sat with that. Somebody wanted to make sure I would win without raising my voice. My mother, who never raised hers, had reached forward 11 years to make sure I would never have to raise mine. For 11 years I had owned that house and not known it. For 1 week, my brother had owned a key to a house he did not own at all. Let me explain the law of it plainly, because this audience knows that a story like mine lives or dies on whether it would actually hold up. And I have learned every inch of how this one holds. A deed with a reserved life estate is a real and common thing. My mother deeded the house to me, but kept the legal right to live in it for the rest of her life. While she lived, it was her home, her responsibility, her front bedroom to give to whichever child she pleased. The moment she passed, the life estate ended, and the full ownership, what the lawyers call the remainder, became mine automatically, outside the will, outside probate, outside anything Russell's downtown lawyer could touch. The county had the recorded deed. The chain of title ran clean from 1971 to my parents, to my mother, to me. There was no ambiguity in it. There was only a brother who had never once thought to check. Russell had hired a lawyer to manage an estate. He had changed locks and alarm codes on a house. He had done all of it without ever pulling the one piece of paper that any first-year clerk pulls first, the title. He assumed. Men who are certain rarely check. That is not cleverness on my part. It is only that I am a bookkeeper, and a bookkeeper checks the title before she trusts a column of figures, because she has learned through hard years that the world does not balance just because you want it to. I asked Renata Briscoe to do one thing for me. I asked her to order a fresh, certified copy of the recorded deed and the full title search from the county clerk's office, so that what I held in my hand was not an old photocopy from a dead man's file, but a living, stamped, current document straight from the county's own books. She said it would take a few days. I told her I had waited 11 years, and a few more days would not hurt me. But I am a bookkeeper, and I do not like to take a thing on faith when I can see it with my own eyes. So a few days later, I drove to the county courthouse myself. I want to describe this to you, because this is the moment in the title, the moment the whole thing turned on. And it did not happen in a courtroom with a gavel. It happened at a counter under fluorescent lights with a number ticket in my hand that said 47. When my number came up, I went to the counter. "I need a certified copy of the deed and a title search on a property," I said. "Cherrywood Lane." I gave her the address. "You the owner?" the clerk asked. A young woman with reading glasses pushed up into her hair. "That's what I'm here to confirm," I said. She gave me a small look, the look you give somebody who shows up to confirm whether they own their own house, but she typed it in. She waited. The printer behind her woke up and started to feed. "Okay," she said, reading the screen. "This property's been under the same ownership since the conveyance about 11 years back. Reserved life estate, which terminated, looks like recently." "This spring," I said. "The life tenant passed this spring." "I'm sorry for your loss," she said, and she meant it. The automatic kindness of someone who says it 40 times a week and still means it. "So, with the life estate ended, full titles vested in the remainder grantee. That's a Cordelia van. Clean title, no liens, no pending transfers. Nobody's filed anything against it." She glanced up over the glasses. "That you?" "That's me," I said. "Then it's yours, ma'am. Free and clear. You want me to certify 2 copies or 1? 2, I said. "One's going in a folder beside the one my mother kept." "Then you're all set." She stamped the certified copies, 2 firm presses each, and slid them across the counter to me under the fluorescent lights. And that was the entire reckoning, right there. Not a shout, not a courtroom, just a county employee doing her job at a public counter, sliding a stamped sheet of paper to the woman whose name was on it the whole time. I drove home with the copies on the passenger seat where the spare key had ridden 3 weeks before, and I did not let my hands shake this time. There was nothing left to shake about. The numbers had balanced. While I waited, Russell called me twice. The first call came on a Wednesday evening, and he was using the warm voice, the one he uses on clients. "Dee, hey, how you holding up?" He did not wait for the answer. "Listen, I've got some paperwork here from the lawyer, just an authorization. Lets me act for the estate so things move smooth. I'll email it, you sign it, scan it back. 5 minutes. "I'm still grieving, Russell," I said. "I can't look at papers right now." "It's 1 signature, Dee." "I buried my mother 9 days ago," I said. "I can't think about signatures." And I let the silence sit there until he filled it with something gentle and hung up. The second call came 3 days later, and the warm voice was gone, and there was an edge under it I knew from childhood, the edge that meant Yvonne was in the room. "Cordelia, we need to move on the house. We've got somebody interested already. A good number. You're going to want to sign so we can list it." "List it," I repeated. "It's just sitting there, Dee. It's money sitting there." "That house isn't sitting there," I said. "It's standing there. There's a difference." And I told him I'd think about it, and I hung up, and I sat in my kitchen a long while, because there it was, out loud at last. They were not planning to keep our mother's house. They were planning to sell it. The house with 40 years of Sunday dinners in its walls, the house with the azaleas, the house with the pencil marks. And split what they expected would be the proceeds. Yvonne, I would learn, had already met a buyer's agent. She had already, in her own mind, spent her half. During those days of waiting, my daughter Simone called me back from Atlanta. She had been calling every evening since the night of the locks. She is 36, a nurse, the only grandchild who wrote my mother real letters. And she is the one person on this earth who has never once underestimated me. This time I had news. I told her what Renata Briscoe had found. The deed, the reserved life estate, the certified copy on its way from the county clerk. "So, when you said you were going to look into a Friday 11 years ago," Simone said slowly, "you found it. It's in your name." "Your name, Mama? Since when?" 11 years, baby. I didn't know either. Nobody told me." There was a long silence on the line, and then Simone said the thing that nearly undid me. She told me, Simone said. Grandma told me, 2 summers ago. We were shelling peas on the back porch and she just said it, plain as day. Said what? She said, I put the house in your mother's name a long time ago, Simone. One day she's going to find out. And when she does, I want you to make sure she doesn't give it back out of guilt. Those were her words. I thought she was just talking, Mama. You know how she'd get. I didn't know it was real. I should have told you. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, I said. She didn't want you to tell me. She wanted you to hold me to it. That's 2 different jobs. Are you going to give it back? Simone asked. To keep the peace? Because you do that, Mama. You always do that. I did not answer her right away, because she was right, and we both knew she was right. Pearl Van had arranged her affairs across 2 whole generations, never raised her voice once. She knew me down to the bone. She knew the danger was never that I would lose the house to Russell in a court. The danger was that I would hand it to him across a kitchen table to keep the peace. Because I had been keeping the peace my whole life. And she was not going to let me pay for the peace one more time with the only thing she had left me. That phone call is the reason I did what I did next, and did not do what I might have done. I remembered the little brass key from the bank, the safe deposit box, that October, 11 years gone. I still had Mama's pocketbook. I went through it, and there it was, the key in its paper envelope, soft now with age. I took it to the bank on Calder with the certified deed and my identification. The young man at the desk frowned at first. This box is in Pearl Van's name, he said. I'll need to see authorization or letters from the estate or... She passed this spring, I said, and I laid the certified deed and the will on his desk. The deed to her house is in my name, recorded 11 years ago. The will names me. I'm her daughter, Cordelia. He read it. He read it carefully, like a careful young man reads a thing he's afraid of getting wrong. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Van, he said, and he stood up. Let me take you back. Because the deed in my name and Mama's will both named me, they let me into the box. Inside there was almost nothing, and that nothing was the most like my mother of anything in this whole story. There was a single sheet of her good stationery, folded in thirds, and on it, in her careful seamstress's hand, 3 lines. To my Cordelia, the house is yours and was always going to be. You stayed. Now stand on your own ground and do not apologize for it. Mama. I sat in the little curtained room at the bank with that paper in my hands, and I did not cry the graveside kind of crying. I cried the other kind. The way you cry when someone reaches back across a closed door and presses your hand one last time. Then I folded it, and I put it in my pocket, and I drove home, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I did not tell Russell what I knew. I want you to understand why, because it is the whole of who my mother raised me to be. I did not withhold it to trap him. I withheld it because I had decided I would not deliver this news on a telephone, in fragments, in a fight. My mother had handled her business behind a closed door, with her chin level and her voice low. I would handle mine the same way. When the certified deed came back from the county, I would put it in a folder, and I would invite my brother to sit down across a table like grown people. And I would lay it down once, plainly, and let the paper do what paper does. The folder, I should tell you, was my mother's. After the locks, I had asked Russell, through Renata in writing properly, for access to retrieve my personal items and our mother's papers, and the law being suddenly and clearly on my side. His lawyer had advised him to comply. though Russell himself did not yet understand why his own lawyer had gone so quiet and so careful. Among Mama's things in the cedar chest, I found a brass-cornered folder in dark burgundy leather, soft and worn at the edges, the kind a person buys once in their life for the documents that matter. Inside it, she had kept my father's death certificate, the original 1971 closing papers, and, folded in thirds, waiting, her own copy of the deed she had signed at Mr. Foyle's. She had kept her copy in the folder all these years. She had known where it was the whole time. She had simply trusted the drawer. I put the certified county copy into that burgundy folder when it arrived, beside her own. 2 copies of the same truth, the recorded original and the new stamped one, resting together in my mother's good leather folder, with the brass corners catching the kitchen light. I closed it, and I pressed my palm flat on the top of it, the same press she used to give my hand in the car. Then I called Russell and asked him to come to the Cherrywood house on Saturday at 2 o'clock to go through Mama's things together. He agreed. He sounded pleased. He thought, I am sure, that his quiet sister was finally coming around. He brought Yvonne. Of course he did. They pulled into the driveway at 2:05 in his big, clean SUV, and I was already inside, because, you see, I had let myself in, with my own key, the locksmith having come that Thursday, at my instruction and my expense, to change the locks back and hand me every copy. The deed in my name being all the authority that any locksmith in Jefferson County requires. Russell did not know that yet. He walked up to the front door, his door as he believed, and he put his key in the lock, and it turned a 1/4 inch and stopped cold. I opened the door from the inside before he could try it twice. I want to slow down here and tell you exactly what happened, because it is the part Yvonne never thought I had in me. And it is the part I have replayed the most, not for the satisfaction, though I am human, and there was some, but because it is the closest I have ever come to feeling my mother standing in the room. "Dee," Russell said, looking at the door, then at the key in his hand, then back at the door. My key won't turn." "Did you call the locksmith?" "Yvonne, didn't you say the code was changed back when we—" "I called the locksmith," I said. "Thursday, my expense." "You can't just change the locks, Dee." "Funny," I said. "That's what I thought 3 weeks ago, standing on this same porch. Come in, Russell. Come in, Yvonne. I've made coffee." "How did you even get the locksmith to—" Russell started. "Same way you did," I said. "I showed him a piece of paper. Come sit down. I'll explain the paper." I had set the kitchen table exactly as Mama set it for serious conversations. 3 cups, the good ones, the cream in the little pitcher, and in the center, square in the middle of the table, the burgundy folder with the brass corners. Russell's eyes went to it. He is not a stupid man. Insurance men read documents for a living. He sat down slowly. Yvonne did not sit. She stood by the counter with her arms folded, in the same closed-off stance she had taken on the walk the day of the locks. "What is this, Dee?" Russell said. Not quite a question. "It's Mama's folder," I said. "I found it in the cedar chest. There are some things in it you should see." I did not raise my voice. I have not raised my voice in this entire story. And I was not going to start at the table my mother fed us at for 50 years. I opened the folder. I took out the certified county copy first, and I laid it in front of him. And I turned it so he could read it right side up, because I was not trying to confuse him. I was trying to inform him. "This is the recorded deed for this house," I said. "It's stamped by the county clerk. It was certified 11 days ago, but it was recorded 11 years ago. Mama signed it in October at Mr. Foyle's office on Calder. I drove her there. I didn't know what she'd signed until 2 weeks ago. Read the grantee line, Russell. He read it. I watched him read it. I watched his eyes go across the legal description of the lot and the names of our long-dead parents in the chain of title, and then down to the line that mattered. And I watched my brother's face do the thing I will carry to my own grave. Not because I wanted to wound him, but because it was the first time in our whole lives I had ever seen Russell Van understand that he had been wrong about something that could not be argued away. "It says Cordelia," he said, quietly. "It says, D. It says your name." "It says my name," I said. Russell sat back. He put one hand flat on the table beside the deed, not touching it, like a man steadying himself on a rail. "When?" he said. "When did she do this?" "October, 11 years ago," I said. "I drove her. I didn't know what she signed. She told me not to ask." 11 years. He said it twice, quietly, doing the arithmetic that insurance men do without meaning to, walking back 11 years to where he had been. Houston, the new house, the promotions, the Christmases he made at home, and the many he did not. She never said a word. To me. Not one word. "She didn't say a word to me either, Russell," I said. "That's the part you're going to have to sit with. She didn't tell me because she trusted me to do right whether I knew or not. And she didn't tell you because..." I stopped. "I am not a cruel woman, and I will not pretend the next part was easy to say to my own brother's face. Because she wasn't sure you'd do right if you knew. She wasn't punishing you. She was protecting the house. There's a difference, and I need you to hear the difference, because I'm only going to say it once." Yvonne came off the counter. "That's not possible. Russell, that can't be legal. She got an old woman to sign a paper. That's undue influence. It's a deed with a reserved life estate, Mrs. Van," I said. And I used her married name on purpose, gently, setting the words down slow so they would not crack anything. "It was witnessed and notarized in a lawyer's office 11 years ago, when Mama was 79 and sharp as a tack, and you two were living in Houston. Her own attorney drew it. There's a second document, her will, and it splits her savings and her things between Russell and me evenly, fair and square, just like she always said she would. She wasn't cutting anybody out. She left Russell exactly half of everything she could leave. The house was never hers to leave. She'd already given it away. To me, 11 years ago. She was 90, Yvonne said. Her voice had climbed, a 90-year-old woman, and you had her signing deeds. She was 79 when she signed it, I said. Read the date, and she didn't sign it with me in the room. I waited in the front office. Her own lawyer drew it and witnessed it. If you think a deed 11 years old, notarized, recorded with the county the next week, gets undone because you don't like it, you go ahead and ask the lawyer Russell's already paying. Ask him today. Ask him on speakerphone, right here. I'll wait. Russell, Yvonne said, turning to him, say something. This is your mother's house. This is half of what, Yvonne? I said. And I did not raise my voice. I lowered it. Because a lowered voice is the one people lean in to hear. Half of a house that hasn't been part of Mama's estate for 11 years? You can't divide what she already gave away. The savings, yes. The furniture, the car, her things, half. Evenly, it's all in the will. Russell gets every bit of his share. But the house was never on the table. It was never yours to list. You found a buyer's agent for a house that wasn't yours to sell. Yvonne's mouth opened and closed. For the first time since the day of the locks, she had nothing ready. You called me the quiet one. I said to her then. I had not meant to. It came up out of 30 years. At the repast, through the door, you said I'd never fought for one single thing in my life. I let that sit a second. You were half right. I've never fought loud. But I have been fighting for this family every single day for 31 years, in a language you never bothered to learn how to read. My mother could read it. That's why my name is on that paper and yours never will be. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, I could hear a mower somewhere down Cherrywood, and a dog, and the ordinary Saturday going on outside, indifferent, whether your world is rearranging itself or not. You changed the locks on me, I said. And this is the only time my voice went anywhere near unsteady, and I let it, because it was true, and I am not made of stone. The week we buried our mother, you changed the locks on a house that had my name on the deed before either of us knew it. I held the spare key you gave me for 3 weeks, Russell. It didn't fit anything. I kept it anyway. You want to know why? He could not answer. He was still looking at the deed. Because I wasn't going to use it against you, I said. I was going to find out the truth first, and then I was going to do whatever the truth told me to do. If that paper had said your name, I would have handed you the house and gone home. I prayed on it. I meant it. But it doesn't say your name, Russell. Mama made her choice 11 years ago, in a quiet room, with the doors shut, and she trusted me to find it. So here's what's going to happen, and there's no fight in it, and there's no court in it, because there's nothing to fight about. This is my house. You are my brother, and you are welcome in it for Sunday dinner. Welcome here exactly as you have been for 40 years. But nobody is selling our mother's house. Not this year. Not ever, while I'm alive to stop it. Yvonne tried once more. We'll see what a lawyer says about this. You already have a lawyer, I said. The one Russell's been paying. Call him. Ask him why he stopped returning Russell's calls about listing the house last week. What's that supposed to mean? Yvonne said. It means he already pulled the title, same as I did. The day Russell asked him to list it, he ran the deed, and he read my name on it, and he knew there was nothing to sell, and a good lawyer doesn't take a client's money to lose. It's a public record, Yvonne. It's been a public record for 11 years. Anybody on God's earth could have walked into that county office and looked. Nobody did. Not Russell, not you, not his lawyer, until he had no choice. The only person who ever went and looked was the quiet one. And that was the end of it, not with shouting. With a stamped sheet of paper that had been sitting in a county office the whole time, waiting for someone to be quiet enough to go and read it. I poured the coffee. Russell drank his. Yvonne did not touch hers, and after a while she went and sat in the SUV. Russell stayed at the table another 20 minutes, and we did not talk about the deed anymore. We talked about Mama. I should have come home more, he said, into his coffee, not at me. I know that. You don't have to say it. I wasn't going to say it. Yvonne thinks you planned this. The deed, all of it. I found out 2 weeks ago, Russell. Same as you found out today. He was quiet a while. I was scared of her dying, he said. 10 years, I've been scared of it. Every time I drove down here, it felt like a goodbye, and I couldn't keep saying goodbye to her. So I stopped coming. That's the truth of it. It's not a good truth. No, I said, but it's an honest one. I believe him. People run from doors they're afraid will close. I had spent my whole life walking toward them. Neither one of us was lying. We were just made different. Before he left, Russell did one thing I did not expect. and I will give it to him because he gave it freely. He took the new brass keys out of his pocket, the locksmith's keys, the ones he had cut the morning after the funeral, and he set them on the table beside the folder, all of them, in a small, bright pile. "These were never mine to cut," he said. "No," I said. "They weren't." "You could have told me on the phone, Dee. First week saved us all of this." He gestured at the folder, the coffee, the kitchen. "Why'd you wait?" "Because you'd have fought me on the phone," I said. "And I didn't want to win that way. I wanted to lay it on the table where Mama fed us, and let you read it with your own eyes, like a grown man, and let you decide what kind of brother you wanted to be after you read it." I looked at him. "You decided pretty well, Russell. You set your keys down. That's more than I expected." "Don't make me out a hero," he said. "I changed the locks on my own sister." "You did?" I said. "And then you set the keys down. Both things are true. We're going to live in both of them, you and me." He did not say sorry. Russell has never in his life said the word sorry out loud. It is not in him. But a man who lays his keys down on the table is saying it in the only language he has. And I have spent a lifetime learning to read the things my family says without words. I left the keys where he put them. I have them still in a dish by the door. And I do not need them. And that is exactly why I keep them. I want to tell you the truth about how it sits now, 2 months on, because I do not believe in stories that end too clean. Russell and I are not what we were, and we are not what Yvonne feared either. He took his half of Mama's savings, $8,340, after the funeral costs that he, to his credit, paid more than his share of. And he did not contest the deed, because there was nothing to contest, and a good insurance man knows a closed case when he reads one. He has come back to the house twice. The second time he brought his grandson, and the boy ran through the rooms just as Russell and I had run through them 60 years ago. And I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched my brother show his grandson the pencil marks on the pantry frame where Mama measured our heights. And I let the past be the past. Yvonne has not been back. She calls me the quiet one still, I am sure, in whatever room she says these things in. She is welcome too. She was right that I am quiet. She was only wrong about what quiet is. She thought quiet meant a woman who would not fight. My mother knew quiet meant a woman who fights once, completely, with a document instead of a raised voice, and then puts the coffee on. I did not do any of this alone. And I want to name the ones who stood with me. Because a person who tells you she did a hard thing by herself is usually lying. Renata Briscoe, who inherited a dead man's files and treated my mother's 11-year-old wishes as if they had been signed that morning. My daughter Simone, who flew home from Atlanta the day after the kitchen table and walked the rooms of that house with me and helped me decide which of Mama's dresses to keep and which to give to the church. Mr. Esparza at the funeral home, who saw the whole shape of it in one flick of his eyes and said nothing, because it was not his to say, but who looked at me like a man who knew. And a courthouse clerk whose name I never got, number 47 on a Tuesday, who slid a stamped sheet of paper across a counter and called me ma'am, and never once guessed she was handing me back the ground I was raised on. The reckoning had a great many hands in it. None of them were raised. The burgundy folder lives in the cedar chest again, where Mama kept it, with the certified deed inside it, now beside her own copy, and my father's papers, and the 1971 closing on a house that cost $9,400 and turned out to be worth more than any money. Because it was the proof that one person in this family had seen me clearly. On the first Sunday of every month, I take the folder out and I press my palm flat on top of it. the brass corners cool under my hand, repeating the small press she used to give mine. Then I watered the azaleas. They came back this spring, redder than I have ever seen them. I gave my notice at the flooring company last month, after 19 years and one Christmas ham a year. I'm going to live in the Cherrywood house. I have already moved my notebooks into the front bedroom, the one I slept in when I came back at 33 thinking it was temporary. Simone is talking about bringing her family down for Thanksgiving, the first Thanksgiving the house will have hosted since Mama. And I have been standing in the dining room measuring it with my eyes, counting chairs, just as my mother must have counted them for 40 years. The pencil marks are still on the pantry frame. I am going to add Simone's children to them this year, in graphite, low down near the floor, a fourth generation of heights on the one strip of wood nobody can sell. I am 64 years old. I spent 31 years being the one who stayed, and 1 week being the one who got locked out, and I learned in that week the thing my mother had been trying to hand me, folded in thirds, for 11 years. If this story touched your heart, stay a moment longer. And tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is in your part of the world. Because I read everyone, and I like to imagine all of us sitting at one long table with the good cups out. A locked door only tells you who is afraid of what is inside. The deed was never about the house. It was the proof that my mother saw me clearly when no one else bothered to look, and that she wrote down what she saw, and signed it, and filed it away in a county office, and trusted me to be still enough to go and find it. So let me leave you with the question Mama would have asked, with the door open and the coffee poured. If your family had handed you a key that didn't fit, the week you buried the woman who raised you, would you have rattled it in the lock until your knuckles bled, demanding to be let into your own grief? Or would you have done what I did, gone quietly to the county where the truth is kept, and let the record open the door that no key ever could?